I'm just pointing out that your proof texts show God as in time. They don't show God as being outside of time. And so what I've found is a lot of people will be like, hey, God's outside of time. Here's all these verses. And if we actually just look at them, they actually don't say that God's outside of time. They show that he's temporal.
Because he declares the end from the beginning, from ancient times, things that have not been done, that proves that he is living a temporal existence exactly like ours?
Yeah, I'd finish the verse saying, my counsel shall stand and I will do all my pleasure. That's future tense. He will do what he wants to do. He hasn't done it yet.
But how does that conflict with the view that God is both transcendent and immanent, as I presented in my opening statement? How is that a conflict for me?
Because you haven't shown from the Bible that God is outside of time. You've only shown
right
from
here by saying outside of time, he's decreeing what he's going to do. And then inside of time, he's doing it. He's transcendently declaring and he's immanently doing.
So this doesn't say that God decreed anything outside of time. It actually refers to the beginning. So there is no end in beginning in timelessness.
So in the beginning, of course, is a phrase that, is found in Genesis 1:1, John 1:1. What do you take that to mean, particularly in John 1:1? In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. What is John trying to communicate about the beginning?
What's being communicated is the beginning of creation.
But right? He's not, well, he gets there in verse 3, I think, but before he gets there, he's speaking of an existence of the Word with God, the Logos with God. And that's not at creation.
Yeah, so he says in verse 3, as you said, all things were made through him. So he's giving an account of the past, just like Moses did in Genesis, and it's in the beginning of creation. Here's what happened. But again, your position is there is no beginning.
Well, you believe God has no beginning, right?
Correct.
So, we agree on that.
Yes. And so if it says in the beginning, it's not referring to God, it's referring to something else. And if we read Genesis 1 and John 1, it's referring to the beginning of creation.
But there was an existence of Father and Son together before creation.
Yes, which proves that God is temporal.
Again, I disagree with your philosophical deduction there, but we are limited in our language to just say in the beginning to refer to times before times. There really isn't a way that we could clearly articulate it to meet your standard, I don't think. It seems as though you're imposing a standard that's unwarranted.
My standard is simply, where do we find in Scripture that God is outside of time? And we just don't. Everything that I heard you read shows that God is in time. For example, you said in your opening statement, the Bible shows us God's response to sin. To respond to sin is something you can only do in time.
Yes, he is immanent and he does respond to sin in time. I just because I affirm his immanence, that doesn't mean it's to the exclusion of his transcendence. And I'm not sure why you're having a hard time accepting that theological position that's been put forth for centuries.
Because it's extra biblical. You have not established biblically that there's this thing called transcendence and immanence. That's the problem.
Okay.